you all for joining us on this BizCase panel here. Our panelists are excited to share their wisdom with you. We This is actually the fifth one of these events that we've done. So I can't believe that it's already been five of these panels that we've hosted. So we hope that you get the same enjoyment that we get from them. And like I said, we got a great panel this morning. Quick ground rules. Really, there's two. One is, we're not selling or promoting any products here other than Warner Stellian and Leslie Pools and Levi's jeans from our panelists. Outside of that, the other comment I would make is we have a great we have over 700 people in the OMG group on LinkedIn. I'd encourage you all to leverage that, use it as a resource to get your questions answered on all things OMS. We'd love to see more people use that forum. We're having great success with these events, but we'd love to see more of you start to use the actual LinkedIn channel. So, all right. With that, speaking of getting together, we're going to do our first poll. Ron, if you would hit the link, the NRF poll. So, wondering if you want to go ahead.
Yep, one second. Just takes a second.
Yeah. So essentially on this poll, what we'd like to just gauge is, as an OMG group, how many of you are going to be going to NRF in January? And if you are going, would you be open to having an OMG meetup somewhere? So if you would just take a second and answer that poll, that would be awesome. All right. We got 8 responses coming in so far. Cool. So it sounds like obviously we only got 9 responses here, so tough to gauge whether or not we'll be doing a get together or not, but thank you for the input. All right, so moving on back to the presentation here. Before we get into the panel discussion, on business cases, would love to hear from you all on maybe what is the one thing that is at the top of your mind as it relates to getting your business case approved. If you're, whatever organization you're in, you've likely got a business case that you're working on of some sort. What is it, just to help our panelists get a sense of what the audience is feeling out there? If you would drop into chat here, what is one thing that's getting you worried about getting your business case approved? Just one thing. What's at the top of your mind, keeping you up at night? Feel free to just drop your answers into the chat. My calculation. Estimating revenue lift resulting Omni capabilities. Trusting the assumptions. I hear you. Value measurement. The usual suspects are showing up on this list. Yes, identifying true pain points. All right, good stuff. All right. Abhishek, have we gotten, there's budgeting conflicting priorities? Yes. Good stuff. Do we think we've got most of the people that are trying to get in?
I think so. There are few on the LinkedIn Live as well. So our backup plan to have LinkedIn Live is working.
Good. All right. Okay. Building the argument that competitors can partner but still compete. Interesting. Charles, you want to say a couple things about that? You've dropped in a few things here.
That was kind of a weird one, right? But I'm facing a business model right now. I work in the bev alc industry for a supplier, a distributor of many suppliers, and we're looking at third-party marketplaces as a way to expand our business and leveraging our OMS capabilities to work with them. And one of the things, while we are competitors, we're B2B, third-party marketplaces are largely B2C. How do we fulfill for them, but also maintain our 3-tier status and things? So it's for me right now, I know the opportunities out there, the business is there, but I've got a lot of cultural and a lot of shifts to make. So
yeah, very interesting. Yes, the marketplaces have rocked our world in that way for sure.
Right.
Good stuff. All right. So
Chap,
we're going to move on.
Up.
Yeah, Dylan, go ahead.
Yeah.
Dylan, you want to make a comment?
An example that probably everyone's familiar with for that one is determining whether you're going to play with Amazon or not.
Exactly. Yeah. Amazon, the frenemy. Yes.
Right.
All right. Moving on, Ron, do you want to launch our next poll? We're going to do one more poll and then we're going to jump into our panel. And I am really interested in this one. And this will set the stage. So a lot of you have done a lot of business cases. The question is how often do you see the finance team come back and do an audit on the claims that were made in said business case? So in any organization that you've been in, whether you're a retailer or you're, professional services, et cetera, and we've all done business cases. How many times have you seen an audit done on that business case? Wow.
Our audience is lucky. They've not been part of an audit, right?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
Fortunate.
Are you saying wow, Chap, because the results are great?
No, I kind of expected this. I know Chris Gullickson is cringing right now. So,
hey, babe,
yes,
Chap, based on this response, your first question is no longer valid. Nobody loses their sleep to get their business case approved then.
It is kind of amazing to think about the fact that, we've got, almost 60% of business cases never have a true up accounting, yet we put a lot of work into perfecting them and on the upfront. Very interesting.
Not only have I seen it audited thoroughly, but I've also seen people take out, if you're promising certain, lower cost to serve, et cetera, I've seen them take it out of your budget for the year, and then you're left to deliver.
Wow.
So
that must hurt.
That's an interesting one.
So that's a good way to keep track of it.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. For the maybe one person that answered 90 to 100% of the time, what industry are you in? Care to comment?
Yeah, it was me. So I work for Gap, and especially at Gap, we have a culture of steerco and keeping senior leaders in loop. So after every major initiative, we have a very intensive data-driven metric and measurement analysis that we present to the leaders, and it gets scrutinized very, and
Cool.
you have to prove.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so personally, I had to convince that whatever I have delivered has worked a lot. So
Awesome. Good stuff. All right. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to our moderator, Laxman, who will introduce himself and the panelists, and we'll get going. So stage is yours, Laxman.
Thank you, Chap. Thanks everybody for being here, and thanks for setting the context, Chap, and also for the Order Management Gurus group to give me this opportunity. It's a very timely topic because this is the time of the year usually when budgets are getting set and all that for retail. So I'm sure everybody's thinking about business cases and business value. So it's a kind of a timely topic. So first, I'll quickly introduce myself, and then I'll ask Brianne, Chris, and Mangi to spend 30 seconds just introducing yourselves for the benefit of the folks here, the audience here. So my name is Laxman Mandayam. I'm a co-founder at Nextuple. I have been in this OMS domain for about a couple of decades, primarily on the product implementation and consulting side of the world as a service provider to retailers. Really happy to be here. Brianne, would you like to?
Sure. Brianne Murphy. I am currently the Vice President of Distribution and Omnichannel at Leslie's. I've been in Omnichannel for probably, I would say, 20 years now, give or take. Worked at a number of retailers, and this topic is pretty near and dear to my heart because I've spent a lot of my time and career convincing folks to make the move to either implement omnichannel systems or upgrade omnichannel systems. Luckily, in my current role, I didn't have to do any of that. When I got to Leslie's, they were already on OMS in the cloud, so it made my life a lot easier to make the transition here. But I can empathize with questions and struggles that people may be having in this body of work in terms of getting things articulated, communicated, and those business cases approved ultimately. So happy to be here. Nice to see everybody.
It's awesome. Thanks, Brianne. Mangi, do you want to go next?
Sure, Laxman. Hi, everybody. Mangi Mehta. I'm currently with Levis, Strauss & Company. I manage their enterprise order management, omnichannel globally. Just like Brianne, probably I have 20 plus years of experience, worked with various Fortune 100, some smaller companies. OMS has been always a challenge, right? I think it doesn't matter how big or small, but over the last 20 years, I think the landscape has changed. Things keeps going back to how we started probably 15, 17 years ago. So it'll be interesting, and I'm glad I'm part of this panel. So thank you, guys.
Yeah, I have to say thanks, Mangi. And I have to say that Mangi has been trying to get his camera to work since yesterday, and I think he's having a hard time. But
I think it worked in the morning, and all of a sudden now the button just disappeared. So I have no idea. Sorry, guys.
Thank you for all the effort. Thank you. Really appreciate it.
That's okay. No worries. No worries.
Yes. And last but not least, Chris, you're on the other side of the table from us most often. So love to get your introduction here.
Sure. Thank you for the invitation. So I'm Chris Gullickson. I am the CFO of Warner Stellian. We are a 12-store appliance retailer headquartered in St. Paul, Minnesota. We have stores in Minnesota, Iowa, and we're opening in Kansas City in 2024. So we're quite excited about that. I have a long history in different accounting and finance roles. I started in public accounting and then spent several years at General Mills, Best Buy, where I worked a little bit with Chap, and then Red Wing Shoe Company for 14 years, another Minnesota-based company that sells safety footwear and PPE. So it's great to see Chap again. And I've been at Warner Stellian now a year. I'm certainly not an order management guru. I don't like to think I'm on the other side of the table. I want to be on the same side of the table. I'm here to partner and help and make sure we're making good decisions. So I can't answer any OMS questions, but in terms of the theory of budgeting and capital allocation, ROI, I can share some thoughts. So good to see you all.
Thank you for saying that, Chris, because I was kind of like I was hoping that you would say that because you're the guy we try to convince usually to give us the money to do these projects. But anyway, I just want to dive right in. First question I have is for Mangi. Mangi, this is in the context of in all of my experience, a lot of times we see the OMS space being kind of bucketed into a back-end system or as an IT enabler. It's not the e-commerce front end, or it's not the the system that's actually doing the back end like a fulfillment system or anything like that. which leads to challenges with how funding gets allocated for these projects, for OMS projects. How, as an IT leader that's been responsible for OMS for about 2 decades now, can you share some best practices in terms of how do you break out of that paradigm of folks viewing the order management as an enabler and a back office system than a frontline value driving component of the investment architect of the investments?
Sure, Laxman. I think before even I start diving into this answer, right? I think Chap, when he did the poll, I don't know if it was 60 or 80% of the people, they really didn't care about this first question. But let's go into it. So I think this truly resonates with most, if not all, right? Historically, I think, Laxman, what you basically just indicated, I think the true value of order management really gets overlooked, right? Typically, it's seen purely as a back office or an enabler. And basically what that does is limits the total funding and allocation. I think what this group and anybody who is in this space needs to just focus on the critical role that OMS plays, right? And elevate, saying, okay, here is what are the potential opportunities it unlocks, because that's the only way. I think somebody has to advocate it if you need to really break free from this mantra. So I would say highlight on the broad OMS processes, capabilities. Don't just highlight on the back-end process, right? I think Brianne is going to probably touch on it, an omni-channel, which probably traditionally people don't really tie directly to OMS because there are multiple systems involved. But OMS is the core when you actually look at any multi-channel capabilities, right? One is that whether you look at payment, any core capabilities, supply chain, financial stability. And I think I want to see if anybody or Laxman, you have more questions, but I think there are some aspects, we can go into some of the key aspects and talk through some examples as to what I believe can help the group basically make a case stronger that why it's not really a pure backend. It basically is enabler, both from a strategy standpoint, from a value creation standpoint, right? So there are a lot of different things it can be considered.
Yeah, I would love to kind of get some of those examples and especially, again, not looking for anything that's confidential, Mangi, but just in terms of how do you translate can you give some examples from your career of where you've had success with, breaking out the value of an order management investment into, real quantifiable business, value drivers, so to speak?
No, sure. I can do that, right? So I think as I basically indicated in the summary, right? You got to demonstrate the value creation piece very clearly, right? Illustrating how it adds value, how it optimizes efficiency, reduce your cost, on-time delivery, right? Even to a customer experience. And if I have to go into some of the examples, I think at least for Levi's, I can talk without going into any specific details, right? Like pandemic really fast-tracked our journey for omni-channel. I think we have been always DTC, but I think DTC first is the mantra that basically our leadership wants everybody to just hit every morning, right? So to me, Omni has become big. Anything customer, that should be your focus, right? Everything you do is customer first, right? Multi-channel selling. So whether you sell something in a store, right, you can return online, or you basically enable buy online, pick up in store, ship from store. If basically say, for example, buy online, pick up in store, you don't have anything available at a specific store, make sure you basically ship it from another store, give customer that option, try to provide upselling and cross-selling options when basically consumer goes through this journey, right? The other thing also I would say, which probably is getting really, really hot these days, is with this predictive analysis, AI, all that stuff, trying to do basically even pre-purchase, right? Predictive delivery dates earlier in the funnel. If you surface it earlier, I think basically that will result in increased conversion. So in my mind, I think we probably, a lot of people have different ways of basically estimating delivery dates and trying to tell the customer. But I think the more you do, more places you do and more advanced you do, before that purchase decision is made, you are trying to basically convert more customers. There is a lot of other stuff that we can go through and right. For example, margin optimization, right, which plays a very critical role when you're doing allocation. How do you basically make sure you avoid split shipments, right? So you save cost, right? Do your carrier contracts correctly. Another piece which also ties into OMS, and I think this historically I would say was primarily basically back-end order management, but I don't think it should be viewed as that. Call center capability. Our agent is on the phone with the consumer, right? So to me, I think, yeah, consumer is not directly interacting with the system, but you want to make sure all the data that the agent needs is at his fingertips, right? What orders, what are the returns, what happens if he wants to exchange, returns, refund? Can you probably go ahead and make a refund right away, right? And the other biggest thing, Laxman, I would mention, right? So that was how you basically put your value creation and basically demonstrate that, okay, how OMS really is key and not just backend. But also, other biggest point I will do is you got to align what you do with your overall strategy, right? So, I mean, there is a business case which is being put based on all the market study that is being done, said, hey, I don't have this today, but this is what it looks like, what we're leaving on the table. And to me, that really basically fits correctly. So whatever you try to do with OMS and Omni overall, if you can make it part of that overall strategy, get all your verticals or different organizations, right, aligned, there is, I mean, make sure you have that flexibility and agility, right? So the other biggest thing is also releases, and which is more technical, but if you look at it, our leadership and stakeholder, when business comes with a problem, they don't want to wait for 3 weeks or 6 weeks before they can get things to production. I think every company has different ways of doing things. I've seen companies doing releases every day, some doing weekly, some doing monthly, right? So to me, the more often you can do and more flexible you can be around that, change gears whenever you need to, and be more agile. So to me, there are a lot of those other stuff, as long as you can tie into the overall framework strategy, you should be able to justify that case. I'm hoping that helps, but Laxman, if you have any
No,
follow-on,
absolutely.
please go ahead.
Absolutely. Yeah, I was, so basically tying it to overall strategy and then to trying it to quantifiable business benefits, business initiatives. So essentially, I want, right? Sorry.
No, I think you said right. I mean, a lot of different things, which I think probably Chris and Brianne will also go into, right? You can do a lot of benchmarking, right? How do you prove your ROI on your investment, right? Be always customer centric, as I said, customer first. That should be your key. So overall, actually, I think you can mitigate your risk, be more current, and try to compete in the marketplace.
Got it. Yeah. I wanted to kind of piggyback on that, and Brianne, basically what Mangi is saying is this is the definition or the justification or the value case is largely built has to be built on the basis of the strategy and the business initiatives that come into play. So would love to, anything you want to add here in terms of how you would best practices for how you would partner with the tech folks in making the justification for some of these investments, which can be large at sometimes.
Yeah, I think there's a couple things. One is, I think a lot of times these are IT-driven programs and initiatives that are stood up, but it really is, I think, articulating the benefit to the customer and how that will drive both top line and profitability. And I know there's been a few studies that have been done related to like your most, or I would say your best customers, the customers that are engaging with you beyond just brick and mortar. And, I think those studies have sort of indicated that your true best customers will spend between 20 to 30% more with you per year annually, if you've got a multitude of channels and choices for them. So you've got, kind of the endless aisle inventory, and you've got, myriad of different ways to get them the product. And so, I think it's worth taking a look, getting with either your consumer insights, your customer insights group, your marketing team, to really understand the value of what those best customers will pay us back for if we've got those capabilities. And that might mean, that might be one additional transaction a year, with those best customers. And that in and of itself, you could provide enough top line benefit to say this is really something we should look into. So, partnering with those teams that have that information, looking at if you do just have brick and mortar and maybe one distribution center fulfilling customer orders, who are those customers that are already engaging with us in multiple channels, and what do we think the value would be to continue to provide additional options for them? And I've found that is, when you can articulate the customer value and benefit and the top line benefit, a lot of people perk up and say, well, this is an absolute no-brainer, and it drives customer overall satisfaction as well, and having those options. I currently engage with a lot of brands still to this day that don't have buy online, pick up in store, and it kind of and there's some of the best brands that I engage with frequently. And it's kind of mind blowing, especially coming out of the pandemic, that is not an offering that they provide for your customer. And certainly I could wrap my head around, spending even more with those brands when they've got those elevated options. So, that partnership and really understanding your customer, I think, is key to the business case, and making sure that you're articulating that aspect of it. The other thing, and Mangi had started to get into this topic as well, is I think as we're building business cases, we talk a lot about the inventory and the flexible fulfillment options, but we don't spend as much time talking about sales order capture. And I know that I think retailers 10 years ago were really leaning into that, enabling endless aisle in the store, enabling sales order capture in the contact center. And I feel like over time we've kind of forgotten that this isn't just a supply chain or logistics tool. It's a facilitator of a lot of those processes, but it's also a huge sales enabler. And I think, if stores teams and contact center teams, customer support teams are willing to lean into that a bit and really drive a bigger sales culture, that is just another way to kind of slam dunk that ROI and make sure that you're getting the customer, the sales lift that you hope to get. I've just seen less and less focus on that. And I think companies should lead with the sales enablement piece, and then look at it from a profitability standpoint with all the supply chain pieces that it provides. And, how do you reduce your total cost to serve? There's two good aspects here of the OMS systems. Mm-hmm. And then, lastly, I think when we're talking about, the ROI, there's the sales lift, there's also the profitability piece. And, different companies have done this different ways. I've seen certain companies build kind of from the bottoms up a scrappy omni-channel P&L to look at all the various channels and look at the cost to serve the customers in those different fulfillment methods and types. And I think it's super important to have to have something like that. Either, there's tools out there that'll do that for you, but also, have that readily available, something that you're reviewing on like a monthly basis with your teams. Because I think, if you rely too much on order algorithm and brokering to make all your decisions for you, you sometimes are missing the most obvious things that could save you money as an organization. And those learnings are key. I still have struggled to find a retailer that can make ship to store profitable. Now, many companies offer it, and it is an offering that, if customers are asking for that, it is, a lot of times something you should offer for them. But the economics of that are really interesting. But until you sort of, pull together this omni-channel P&L to really measure how you're doing by channel, you don't maybe understand some of the dynamics of where you're spending labor, shipping, and all of that. And that can quickly erode your ROI if you're not, you don't have your finger on the pulse of that stuff.
Yeah, that's awesome insights. I do want to dig in, Brianne, into some of the things you talked about on the omni-channel benefits, the cross-channel stuff. But before that, I do want to get Chris's perspective. And this is something that's important. When you look from a budgeting, from a capital allocation perspective, there's obviously the benefits like revenue lift and cost savings and all of that stuff. But then there's all kinds of hidden, other costs that come into play, which erode those benefits. As the finance guy that is kind of responsible for looking at all of this and making those hard decisions on how limited dollars can be spent, can you share, Chris, some best practices in your career, that you've seen working with large retailers, and what are some good examples of where people have done this successfully, where they've justified the value, they've demonstrated the value case adequately to then succeed in getting that allocation?
Sure. Thank you. I've got a couple of very smart panelists here, so appreciate your guys' insight. So yeah, to take a step back, when we think about from a finance perspective, you're competing for scarce resources with growth initiatives, infrastructure, so enablers of growth, productivity, and foundational investments. So replacing the roof, for example, and buying hardware. So there's a lot of competition up there. So I tend to think about it in 3 separate buckets in terms of how to be successful. 1 is make sure your business is intelligent. I'll talk about that. 2, make sure you have a really good process. And 3, maybe most importantly, you have really good people. So business intelligence, and Mangi, you were talking about it. Let's make sure we're clear on the strategic vision of the organization. What are our competitors doing? What are they going to do? Who are our customers? How valuable are they? What do they want? What are they going to want in the future? Let's make sure then that we can identify value and clearly articulate what it is so it can be cascaded down in the organization. All of that creates alignment. The second piece of business intelligence is making sure the organization can identify our capacity. So it's not just about capital resources or dollars. It's about internal associates, their time, how much they can do. And then most importantly, perhaps it's organizational mind share, how much change and process can be done at one time without imploding. So that's business intelligence. Second, process. We've talked about it a little bit here in terms of the managing results, measuring results. Obviously, that's critical. I've been at some organizations where we decide to do a test. And we're going to start testing. And before the test starts, there isn't even a definition of what and when and how we're going to measure success. And what happens if we have success or we don't have success? What are we going to do? So I just reiterate that measuring those KPIs is extremely important. But the other piece of it, as we think about capital allocation, is making sure there is a functioning project management office or somebody that's in charge of keeping up to date on ideas and projects that are out there, what we're working on now and what's coming up. And that's where you start to build the data business cases, identifying hard and soft costs, benefits, the costs, the alignment to our strategy. And then also what's really difficult is the risk, the inherent risk. So an investment is a combination of return, ROI, cash flow, but risk. And higher risk would be something new or different, new geography, new set of customers, new product. Lower risk by definition is something we've already done. And so as we think about, again, return versus risk, that's a big part of it. And then finally would be of the 3 is people. Certainly good leadership that can articulate a vision, hold people accountable, doing audits on past investments. And I also have seen very limited engagement of past audits. So you guys aren't unique on that, something critical. But then I'll put a plug in for my profession. So I work with Chap very closely as a finance business partner. And I'm sure that most of you have those. I hope you do. A finance business partner can have the time and the ability to sit down and understand the business, what creates value, and can link that to the ultimate scorecard, which are the financial statements. So hopefully that person has a little bit of accounting or finance expertise, but then also has a business mind, connecting the two, what's important. I work quite a bit with Chap on creating models, so sensitivity analysis, understanding key assumptions, understanding, again, how we're going to measure results. So that's how I think about it. Hopefully that answered your question.
Yeah, absolutely, and very insightful as well, because I think what I'm hearing you say, Chris, is not just the value and the initiative itself and the opportunity itself, but also how it fits into the larger scheme of things from a business strategy perspective, but also change management and risk and all of that has to be factored in when you're looking at scarce resources. How realizable is that opportunity for this company versus anybody else. I think all of that is absolutely insightful. Any Mangi, Brianne, any follow-ups to Chris's? I know you guys have built business cases and presented these business cases to finance folks. Any thoughts you want to add there to what Chris just said?
I think that the thought, leadership from finance is key, and to take that partnership with the team. I think you're spot on, Chris, with what you just said.
Fantastic.
Yeah,
I did.
Going to say this. I was going to say the same thing
Laxman, there's a
Brianne said.
couple questions out there in the
sorry
that have come in.
Go ahead.
No
Sorry.
worries.
Go ahead.
Laxman Dylan also
thank you.
Hand up.
Sorry, thank you. Go ahead. I'm not able to. I'm just looking at the content, so thanks for reminding me, Chap. I'll let Mangi finish.
No,
and
just
you can go ahead.
Yeah.
No, I was just going to comment real quick. Ditto what Brianne said, right? I think Chris was spot on. Some of the things he touched, I think we all go through it everywhere, right? It's about people. How do you manage capacity, right? Doing the returns versus risk. So I think it's spot on.
Yeah. This might be a question for you, Chris, as someone that reviews business cases. A question came in: what's the role of a leader's passion and past performance on business case ROI in the approval equation? Like, let's say you've got a really good business case, or it's a good business case, but you've got poor performance on delivering against them in the past. Does that come into the equation, or do the numbers stand on their own?
No, it absolutely does, right? So that helps us understand the risk inherent. Everybody's got ideas. Everybody wants to invest in projects. And when you add all of those great ideas together, it would indicate sales growth is going to be through the roof, right? Well, obviously, that's not the case. Some ideas are better than others, and some have a higher likelihood of success than others. So past performance and experience certainly is critical. That creates a lot of trust.
Yeah. Okay. And then another question came in on just any ideas on how to build resilience into the business case to reduce the risk of projects getting paused midway. Is there a way to create interim, checkpoints? Good question. We've all been in a paused project before.
Yes.
Any one of you want to tackle that one?
I can take a quick shot at part of it. I think building in wins along the way are important, noticeable milestones to gain confidence of the organization that we're making good progress. If we can measure progress on time, on budget, on scope as we go, that's certainly the case. Or that would be a benefit. It is always a risk of ideas and projects slowing down or speeding up, and I think that's just the fact of the way the business world works. So we have to be prepared for that, but those milestones will help.
Yeah, I think this is I just wanted to add here, Chris, that this is goes back to something that I think Mangi mentioned earlier, and this is usually a challenge that we kind of come across on the tech side is how do you measure the value of agility? So, for example, the ability to do things faster, quicker, in smaller increments continuously versus as a big bang. It's a hard thing to measure typically financially. And I think what you're saying here makes complete sense. It's not just the value of the business opportunity that you're looking at. It's also how well can we execute it in a step-by-step fashion incrementally versus as a big bang, highly risky endeavor. I think the what you're saying is the value needs to be tested by kind of like all of these types of like associated with the game sense. Chap, any other questions that are on the list? I see Dylan's hand is up.
Go ahead, Dylan.
All right. Monkey wrench in here. So the one piece that I want to challenge everybody for, and it's kind of to your first question, Laxman, is when we say the words just an enabler, I don't think we should demonize platforms for being an enabler. You don't sell it as an enabler. I think that's the biggest problem here. And whether you think you are or not, you're a salesperson if you're on this call and you're making business cases, because you got to sell to Chris. right? Like you got to sell to the rest of the executive team the idea in the end. And if you take a step back and you look at other platforms, you wouldn't go to somebody and say, I want to go buy a content management system because I want to have something to create my content in, because the response to that is, well, don't you have Photoshop and all these other tools that you're using? What do you need another content creation tool for? That's not how you pitch it, right? It's not about that. It's about what the changes are on the other side that it enables. So if you're going to have something that's an enabler, that's totally fine. But you need to start with what that value is going to be that you're going to expose, and to the point of incrementality. If there's a lot that's coming and you're really looking at one thing, an example I'll give with this one is like if you're going to implement PayPal, and you do your analysis of you're going to implement directly or go through a payment gateway, and you decide that for the long term you have a payment gateway update that needs to happen, maybe new version, new payment gateway, because you're going to be exposed to other payment types, you need to go in starting talking about the value of what you're going to get from PayPal, and then the follow-on value you can get from those payment types, and then say we accomplished that through doing this enabler. But the enabler is a great thing, I think, within here. Is a lot of these tools and a lot of the investments that happen at companies tend to forget the tools that enable because they're not pitched as what the value is coming on the front end. And then you end up with antiquated backends to e-commerce, antiquated marketing systems, antiquated fulfillment technology, and omni-channel tools that were maybe great 10 years ago, and now they aren't so great. So I think if you can always lead with that side, and think about what your immediate value is going to be and what that following value is, it's a better story. And it's, it's going to follow the way that you're getting sold to for everything else that happens in your life. The last car you bought, nobody started with how the transmission works, unless you walked into that place and said, I really care about the one with the best transmission, right? And then they're going to cater their conversation to you.
Right.
But as a salesperson, in the end, the team that you are putting this information into, whether authored and it's going through somebody else, maybe your finance partner, or if you're presenting it directly, it's just like everything else. You need to know your audience, and we all got to get used to our partner that we're working with. And I love always having a finance partner on this, saying nobody in that room is going to care about this, right? You can't take it personally, and we got to start with, well, where are they and care? Where is the true value? Or is this something that we're both going to agree here? Maybe we just stop for now because we don't have a good story associated with this. So yes, that's
no, I think Dylan, great call outs. I think what you said, right? I think maybe we need to basically pivot a little bit differently. And as you said, right, that value creation piece and aligning with strategy, that becomes your going in thing instead of just enabler. And I think more so, it's not what we go in with, it's how this thing is traditionally viewed by stakeholders, leadership, right? I think that's the challenge we are trying to basically overcome. But I think all your points are very valid, right? I mean, there are a lot of things I think I was making note while Brianne and Chris were chatting about inventory, endless aisle. All those are great value propositions, right? I mean, having a good team trying to do your capacity. But I think you have very good call outs. Thank you.
Oh. Laxman, you there?
Yeah. Let's take this here. Another topic on. Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. You just froze there for a
second. Can you hear me? Yeah. Sorry.
Yep.
Yeah. No, okay. No, I was just saying, I did want to, given keeping an eye on the clock, there's another important topic that I want to get to here, which is the back half of this process, which is measurement. And I had a couple of questions for Brianne to start on that. So typically what we've seen, with business cases, you touched on this earlier, Brianne, is the omni-channel shopper and the benefits of a cross-channel kind of lift that you get from omni-channel shoppers, the increased profitability, the lifetime value, all of that stuff. So one challenge I've often encountered or seen is actually measuring the real benefit of an omni-channel. There's estimates that talk about them being or multiple orders of magnitude, more profitable and valuable. But how, there are also challenges with attaching sales to into Omni. In your experience, having done this type of stuff for the last 2 decades, can you share some ideas on how you can actually quantify, measure these types of cross-channel benefits that are clearly there, but how do you quantify that?
Yeah, I mean, I think again, I like the comments we were talking about tightly, partnering with your finance, folks that are supporting and going to help you analyze the results as you move through implementation, ultimately in realization. I mean, I think the other piece again is going back to your teams that measure consumer insights and behavior and making sure that you are getting not just customers moving from one preferred channel to another channel, but that you're actually getting the incrementality with your best customers and that they're paying you back for the investments that you're making. And then I think additionally too, that, that group of individuals is going to have keen insights into what new customers come into your brand, because you do offer things like same day delivery or buy online, pickup in store. And so I think staying very, very tightly connected to that team and the customer behavior is critical. In terms of the profitability, I mean, there's a myriad of things that are important to various organizations or they're measuring actively. In certain organizations I've been in, on-time delivery to customer was absolutely the most important thing, because that drove, the best customer experience. It enabled us to compete with the Amazons of the world. So having this 2 to 3 day click to porch was absolutely the most important thing. And we didn't want to compromise on any service level, degradation with our customers, but that also came at a bit of a cost. And so we would then leverage our Omni tools to reduce, the shipping, the handling, the proximity to the customer as much as we can to ensure that we're delivering on the service. But we started with the goal of being in customer's home, click to porch, 2 to 3 days. For other places I've worked, it's absolutely been the lowest cost to serve. So, throw out the on-time delivery to customer, but get it to the customer in the cheapest way, that you can. Try and avoid markdowns at all costs and leverage the system to do that. And those organizations are typically where you will see these omni-channel P&Ls built out by channel to just really monitor and keep your pulse on what's happening in the network. Where are customers buying from? Where are they fulfilling from? Where do we have opportunities to continue to tweak the system, maybe tweak our inventory placement to meet those expected results? But I think having the overall goal for what it is that we're going to stand for from a customer experience and fulfillment perspective is where it starts. And then the measurements come, as a result of what those KPIs are. I've also worked at places that have had no KPIs around customer experience and no clear direction. And it leaves us, as a kind of an omni-channel team trying to figure things out on our own of what do we think that customer experience needs to be. And I think that needs to be, the organization needs to define that vision, that strategy, and that this is the enabler to that. So.
Yeah, that makes sense. So having strong KPIs and measurement is critical. On the finance side of the world, Chris, what can you share kind of like your thoughts on what are you looking for from a post-investment? So the project's already underway. You've got the initiative is greenlit, and now how do you measure? What are your expectations on, has it delivered the value? Is there incremental investment needed? Some of those types of things. And I think Brianne mentioned earlier, even like holding costs down to what was committed or holding, some extreme, situations can also emerge, right? Like where the business is not given or given a budget based on the commitments that were made. Love to hear from your perspective.
Yeah, I think that was a great idea to match budgets to what was committed. I think that's a great way to go. Frankly, all these post-project audits are extremely difficult for many reasons. I've seen it because people have moved on, right? There's different peoples in the chair. There's things that have happened outside of the control of the project, so it seems worthless to go back and look at it, but it is important, of course. I think having a really strong forecasting and budgeting program in place is important. We look at not just what the next budget is going to be, but we try to do a rolling 4-quarter forecast. And that includes putting in the benefits that have been promised for business cases for projects that have been going on. So it's a difficult process, to be sure.
Right. The one thing that I have seen, I would love to get your reaction to it, is one thing I've seen is sometimes what happens, and Brianne, you might have seen this as well, is when that comes into play, organizations, business and tech leaders become shy of putting in higher value case estimates because you know that your budgets are going to be tied. If you promise a lot of value, you're going to get held to meeting those objectives. Either it's a big revenue lift number or a big cost saving number. So there's this tendency it gets countered by this tendency to be more pessimistic about benefits, and that can actually cut out projects that are really value adding. So there's that balance. So I would love to hear your perspective, Brianne, and then Chris and Mangi, on how do you guys view this?
For me personally, I don't want to put a benefits case out into the ether that I don't think I'm gonna hit. That said, I'm gonna be conservative. If I promise to save $2 million worth of shipping because I'm getting goods closer to the customer and it's coming out of my shipping budget, I'm going to be a little bit more conservative to make sure that I can squarely hit those goals. So you're right. I think that's a natural behavior to make sure that that we're not overpromising and we're not hedging on the side of being really aggressive. But your point is valid and interesting, and that maybe that is where the line is drawn of saying if I'm going to hold myself to be a little bit conservative, ensure that I could deliver these results, maybe that hedges down what you ultimately think you could deliver. And maybe those projects are not approved at the end of the day in terms of the total value.
Right, because they're competing against other great ideas. One of the questions I got in the chat is what are some red flags when somebody's presenting a business case? And what I didn't list was benefits that are very difficult to believe, the quantity, the size of the benefit. So I would agree, as a finance person, as a leader, I would much prefer somebody to over-deliver their promises than under-deliver.
Right. I think Aruna posted that, under-promise, over-deliver. Yeah, Mangi, go ahead.
Yeah, no, so I think what you indicated, what Brian mentioned, is true to a great extent, right? We all like to be conservative because I think end of the day, when things happen, you've got to basically somehow pull those numbers. But there are a lot of times where we run into challenges when I say we from a business and product standpoint. If they can't make a compelling enough case, they know it's not going to get approved, right? So there's another side to it where you have seen some fallouts. In some cases, it's worked out great, right? I think somebody touched on it initially when we started. I was monitoring the chat and asked about dropship marketplace value proposition, right? Marketplace was great as long as it worked great for the first initial years. I think dropship is really picking up tremendously these days, right? Now, not to say that marketplace is not there, but I think you've got to be very rational. Yes, most of the time we like to be conservative, but you've got to make sure anyway, if you need to get something over the finish line, you probably put the right data points, due diligence. That is very critical to it. As long as you can stand behind those numbers, that's key.
Right. I think the point you're all making is that the survival of the fittest business case, right? Like it's competing dollars, limited budgets. Nobody has an unlimited source of funds. So yeah, I think we're almost on time. I wanted to, Chap, do we want to just wrap up with closing thoughts? What do you think, Chap?
Yeah, if our panelists can hang on, if there's any, just open it up for any other questions to the panelists for the next 5 minutes or so. If people want to hang on, any other questions that people would like to raise either through chat or live, that'd be great.
Dylan, you have your hand up.
Yep.
Well, before Dylan goes, we gave Dylan a chance. Anybody else besides Dylan? Just hold on. Sorry, Dylan. Just give other folks an opportunity. Anybody else have a question? Anybody else out there?
Vikas has asked a question. Go ahead, Vikas.
You want me to say it, but great to see everybody. Great to see some familiar faces. Just wondering, I mean, Mangi talked about some of the AI-led initiatives that are starting to come up, and I'm sure there are other areas beyond order management that your companies are probably thinking about it. Just wanted to see if you've seen good examples of business cases for AI-led initiatives around omni-channel domain.
I mean, I can give you some of the examples, right? So to me, I think when you look at pre-sales, even when you go into the omni-channel, for example, margin optimizations, right? You can look at a lot of different factors, markdown, slow-moving items, right? Returns which have been refunded back to the stores. Can you do that? So I think you can feed all this into your model. I think those are the things I can think when you look from an omni capability, but endless aisle is another great example. And I'm sure Brianne, Laxman, you might have more examples, but there is a lot happening in this space, though. Even though it's new, I think people are trying to invest quite a bit in this.
Gio,
interesting.
Gio, did you have a comment or a question?
Yeah, thanks, Laxman. Beyond the typical inventory and demand planning solutions that are out there, which we have forecasting, AI getting superior. Does anybody here have experience running simulation or heavy stats against the post-purchase execution, where we're actually predicting the flow, the demand generation, the carrier execution, all those components that come from the post-purchase? I have a client that's looking to do that, and going back to my statistics background in college, so it's actually pretty fun. I just, in the implementations that I've been a part of, we haven't modeled that. Just curious on.
Yeah, are you talking about trying to simulate? Okay, given a set of demand over a course of a time period, what would the fulfillment look like on that, and the overall cost to serve, node utilization, et cetera?
All parts of the supply chain, right? All parts of the post-purchase supply chain, from where would the demand be generated? Was this something that demand planning solutions do, demand forecasting? But it's really post that, where execution, once you have the order, looking at actuals, looking at your actual order fulfillment from your execution, your internal execution from within your fulfillment centers, from your stores, modeling against that, and also modeling against your carrier performance, also modeling against your returns, but your return performance. So that all the processes that we track, for example, within the OMS, all those events, doing simulations against that.
So it sounds like a great idea and an opportunity, but it's a complex problem. Go ahead, Brianne.
Yeah, I was going to say, we would love to be able to do that in my current employer, my current environment. We are not there yet. We have lots of data and a really good analytical team that wants to be able to get to doing some of these things, but we're not as advanced in my current role and being able to do that. It's just super complicated thing you're trying to accomplish there. Yeah.
I can speak to that. Like I know that the whole chain around sourcing till return. I personally have not worked on return piece of it, but I do get to work on sourcing. And one of the things that we have recently done is just do a low cost simulation. So for all the configuration that we have in production, what will happen if you change certain parameters? What will be the ultimate effect of the sourcing on the sourcing decision that we were able to recreate for Gap. As far as simulation for just the effectiveness of the tool goes, right? Like when you are doing any kind of third-party implementation, I would say simulation is one of the way you would measure performance of whether the application that you're going with is better than what you already have. So I do have experience, again, it's not me, but as Brianne was saying, that you need a very strong partnership with the analytics team, and Gap has a very good analytics team. So yeah, I mean, I did get a chance to work on those projects. I do have a question for Brianne, if you're okay. Brianne, so like one of the things you said was that one of the things that we are trying to achieve as omni-channel capabilities is to avoid products getting on markdown, right? Like I get to work on that problem, so I know how critical it is. But always like trying to avoid getting a product on markdown will always come with an increased split package cost because you're trying to push that inventory out of the store. It's going to come with an increased labor cost. It's going to put constraint, or it's gonna, you have to play the constrained capacity of your labor, your shipping capacity, or whatever your outbound transportation is. How do you build a business case? I mean, I know that having, like a strong championship from finance helps, where they know that there is value, but like just to get internal buy-in from all these individual players, what has been your strategy? What has worked for you?
That's a really good question. In terms of the internal partnerships, I think there's a couple different folks beyond, obviously beyond your finance partners, your folks that are involved in, customer experience and the consumer insights pieces. There certainly are, as you're building out the benefits cases, lots of benefits to your e-commerce partners, your store operations partners. The way that we think about omni-channel fulfillment, for my current environment is we love to do omni-channel fulfillment in the off season in my current employer because we've got folks in the stores that are deleveraged right now. It's not pool season, so we're not utilizing them, but we're paying them to be in kind of empty stores for the off season. And so the beauty of these omni-channel systems is they actually really touch almost every team in the organization in some way, shape, or form. Depending on what your goals are, if it is total cost to serve and you're looking at reducing that, finance is a great team to have along the ride. But in addition to markdown avoidance, there's modules and things you can leverage in these tools to also increase your speed to customer. And so quantifying and getting additional folks on board to understand the benefits, I think can be huge.
One of the things that we try to work with this is like giving fair enough advance notice to say store people. So if a feature is going to go live and we know that it's going to increase like the SFS penetration, we just like let them know, hey guys, this is coming, plan your capacity. But yeah, thank you so much for that. That was very helpful.
Dylan, you had your hand raised.
One comment on a question that came up about the AI pieces, I think something that is not solved yet, but really needs to be thought about go forward in pitching any AI as a new initiative to any folks that are going to determine the destiny of the funding for that, is prior to the actual pitch of what's going forward is a change management effort. Because what ends up happening is we pitch that this is going to increase margin by this much. The measurement challenge and modeling that we just talked about is still present. So you're going to get a spreadsheet from the vendor that you've chosen that you want to work with that kind of models something, but until it actually is live, it doesn't mean anything. And if you don't have the appropriate change management and thinking about AI, what ends up happening is people get hung up on individual transactional variances, not the totality of what happened. And as they should, because something that cost $9 yesterday is costing $21 for that one transaction here. So I saw this, it was easy for me to see how often is this coming up. But the reality is with AI, it's only valid at that point in time, at the exact point in time that it happened, because all of the inputs change constantly. And people need to really be educated on that side to understand that you can't get hung up on the single transaction. You need to run parallel of non-AI, AI, and measure what the actual value is coming out of there in total, and then continue to run versus what your historical has looked like, your current historical in AI and your historical pre-AI, or else you're just going to continue to have people not trusting that the AI is actually doing what it wants to do, and then wanting to take over for something that can think faster than they can, and end up making operational decisions, and they want operational levers then and all these other things to change it. In reality, you probably are able to see the measurement, but you didn't inform people enough as to what does this change in our paradigm mean overall. So the change management thing is huge to go after there. The other side here is what my original comment is about two things really. One is, and I'd love to see if anybody's been getting or creating cases this way. One is about not just talking about what good looks like, right? So saying, here's what we think we're going to get on a return. And to Chris's point on the risk being a huge piece, you need to look at the risk up front. And you need to say, this is what bad looks like. This is where this is not worth it anymore. So if we do decide to move forward, we think we have a confidence level of X that we can hit this number, which is good. We're targeting this stretch, which is, Y, and it's over here. But if we start getting over to Z, that's when we need to stop and we need to reevaluate. You need to be upfront on that, because otherwise you don't hit X by whatever number, and you can get your program shut down really fast. You still may be profitable. There still may be value, and there may be opportunities to move through, but it's a lot easier with everything else that's going on to see that's not meeting its expectation. Let's slow on that. And this other thing is, and let's put more money into something else over here. And then the final piece on that is, don't get hung up on surface data. So it's really easy to say, I'm going to increase conversion with this, but are you also going to increase returns? Right? Do that up front and come and be honest about it. If you're going to increase social media traffic to a site, your conversion rate is going to go down. But that smaller rate with more customers is probably still more dollars, and that's okay. You've accepted that you're going to take a less qualified traffic source associated with it. But if you go and say, I want to increase the traffic, and everybody's all excited about what the traffic's going to be, and then conversion rate goes down, all of a sudden that's the social stuff until we figure out what's going on. You're never going to figure it out, because it has continued for, well, I don't want to say never, but it has continued for years and years and years to be one of the lowest converting traffic sources, but it is a massive amount of new traffic that can come through, new customers. So you got to think about all of these things in totality. And the more you can bring in that business case, the more somebody that's in Chris's position can react to it and not have to put on the hat and sit there for a second and say, but what about this? But what about this? If you can come in and say, we've thought about these pieces, getting a no actually feels better on that side, because you already know that there's a challenge and a risk, and you've presented it, and it feels okay. So Brianne, have you looked at those or presented those or anything with those kind of concepts in them?
I was actually, something you said actually stood out that I wanted to comment on, because you were, I think you were kind of pointing out that, the risks up front of doing or not doing, making these decisions to implement or upgrade or not. And I have seen a lot of business cases successfully get moved through the pipeline and get approved by presenting what will happen if we do nothing. And when I talk about that, it's kind of in the context of like on-prem versus cloud. If we do nothing, guys, we can expect to have releases every 6 to 9 months. We can expect a massive upgrade every 3 to 5 years. It's going to cost us millions of dollars. And we're always going to be behind, the 8 ball in terms of getting new features. We're always going to have tons of customizations. Or we could move to the cloud, do one large implementation, constantly be current, and have less customizations, write our own customizations, et cetera. So like looking at what the current infrastructure, if you do have an omni-channel platform, and looking at the future offerings, sometimes those business cases are a slam dunk. Like the cost of just continuing to do what you're doing is actually going to cost you more money in the longer run. And then you get all these other benefits on top of it.
No, and Dylan, I agree with what Brianne said, right? In fact, a couple projects that we had, I mean, that's exactly how we went. Instead of basically turning that risk into saying, hey, if you do nothing, here is how you stay. And I think I have seen more and more initiatives and programs go down that path. But I just wanted to quickly comment on your AI. I think you had some great call outs today. On AI, right? I think what people need to still basically understand, this is an investment. It's a learning, guys. If you're expecting to generate stuff out of it, it might not be the right way to look at it right at this point in time. Because you're right, at this, everything is basically a point in time. If you just cross that over, I mean, it's no longer valid, right? And folks are not used to basically having that mindset. So I would say that's how AI should be actually thought about these days. I mean, till it matures, which I don't know when it's going to mature, but whenever it does, we probably should go through and talk about it. But right now, You should purely think it's an investment. It's an innovative thing. That's what your workforce actually wants to get into, right? Everybody wants to be part of that. And I know you want to do something.
Mangi, I would love to get Chris's perspective on both these. I think Brianne and Mangi both brought up two instances, Chris, that I was thinking of. And I know we're well past time, but since everybody's here and this is a great conversation, one is there's things where the benefit is really in, it's like insurance. It's like if you don't do it and bad things happen, you're screwed. So it's like, how do you quantify the benefit and the relative, prioritization and capital allocation of something that's it's a must do just from protecting yourselves in the future. And second is something like AI, where I think Dylan brings up some great points. It's very, the impact of AI is clearly not understood. Everybody knows that there's huge value, but we don't know the downsides. We don't know what else can come with it, what, implications it has. So how do you take that into account when you're weighing that against other initiatives that may be very hard dollars, right? Like there's things that have hard dollars, hard profitability versus other things that are more,
Yeah, well, a couple of things. I think it's a great idea to set some money aside to be curious, to investigate new technologies or something that is very difficult to understand or predict. I think that makes a lot of sense. I think oftentimes those dollars get cut, and so it goes back to the business intelligence and making sure that we are curious and investing in those things. And that's kind of where it gets back to understanding if we don't do this, what might happen. It gets to the quality of people and their experience, because I don't think there's any silver bullets when it comes to this is exactly what we should do and this is why. It's a lot of experimentation. So I don't have anything too specific to add there. It's tough.
Yeah, but that's an awesome approach, I think, to keep a part of the budget if you have the business strategy clearly defined for some of these types of investments. I see Darko, your hand's been up for a little while.
Hi, thank you. I just wanted to hop on the AI train, mainly because my experience with business partners is that it's very difficult for a lot of business partners to grasp that the core purpose of artificial intelligence is to be a learning model. So in today's world, we are looking for accuracy and precision when we talk about OMS, because we want something delivered today at that hour. But AI does not work that way. There is a three-dimension to it. And the third dimension, the most important dimension, is adaptability. So anytime we try to introduce any learning models, any AI, we can look at, I know Dylan said it's point of time, but it also needs to be across time, because this is where we start, this is where we end. We cannot measure the success based on the initial assessment. And that's
and not on every transaction is what you're saying. I think, makes sense.
Exactly.
Makes sense. Yeah, I think this conversation is such an interesting topic for all of us, especially because we all come with different mindsets. I think we could easily go on for another hour, but I really appreciate the insights that Chris, Mangi, and Brianne, you all have shared. I think this is an awesome topic, and thanks, Chap, for setting this up. Any last closing thoughts from anybody?
No, guys, just want to thank you, Laxman, Chap, and the panel, Brianne, Chris. It was great and some good questions. So thank you for this.
Thank you, everybody.
Yeah, Brianne, Mangi, Chris. Yeah, thank you guys so much for your input and for the audience for the great questions. Awesome conversation. We're over time, so we'll let everyone get back to their day. And but thanks for joining us. Take care, all.
Have a great weekend, all.
Thanks,
Thank
everybody.
you.
Thank you, guys.
All right.